Before the age of maps, before the great ships set their sails for unknown horizons, there was the sea. It was a realm of immense mystery, a vast, dark expanse that held both terror and promise. Its whispers carried on the wind, speaking of monsters and of treasures beyond imagination. For the people who lived on the frayed edges of the known world, the ocean was a living thing. It was a giver of life and a taker of it. And in its cold northern heart, a secret was stirring. A force of nature so powerful it would one day redraw the very maps of the world, though no one yet knew its name or its true worth. This ancient world was driven by a simple, powerful force: hunger. Survival was a daily struggle. Winters were long and cruel. Food was a constant worry, a prayer on the lips of every soul. The land could be fickle, the harvests poor, but the sea was different. It was a wilderness of its own, untamed and seemingly endless. For those brave enough to venture upon its shifting surface, it offered a bounty, a source of sustenance that did not need to be planted or tended. It was a wild harvest, waiting in the deep, cold and forbidding waters. The promise of this harvest was a beacon of hope in a harsh and uncertain time. In the icy currents of the North Atlantic, a creature of immense importance thrived. It was not a gleaming monster of legend, nor a beast adorned with gold. It was a humble fish, the Atlantic cod. It moved in great shimmering armies, so numerous they seemed to be a part of the ocean itself. These were not just fish, they were a biological miracle, a living resource of almost unimaginable scale. The Vikings, those masters of the northern seas, were the first to truly understand its power. They learned to catch it, to dry it in the biting polar winds until it became as hard as a wooden board. This preserved fish was the key to their incredible journeys. This dried cod, or scray as they called it, was more than just food. It was fuel. It was freedom. It was a food source that would not spoil, that could be carried across vast distances. It allowed Viking longships to push further into the unknown than anyone had ever dared. They could cross the wild Atlantic, reaching Iceland, Greenland, and eventually the shores of a new world, long before Columbus. The secret was not in their sails or the strength of their arms alone. It was in the unassuming cod, a fish that held the power to unlock the globe, a silent partner in the first great chapter of transatlantic exploration. If you enjoyed this journey into history, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more epic stories from the past. Your support helps us bring these incredible tales to life. Centuries after the Vikings, a new age of exploration dawned in Europe. Great kingdoms looked to the west, their ambitions fired by tales of gold and spice. They dreamed of new routes to the riches of the east. But a great journey across the Atlantic was a monumental challenge. It was a leap into the void. A ship was a tiny, fragile world, adrift for months on an endless sea. The greatest fear was not storms or sea monsters. It was starvation. How could a crew be fed for so long, so far from any port? The answer, once again, was found not in a treasure chest, but in the cold northern waters. The Basques, a mysterious and ancient people from the coasts of Spain and France, held the key. They were the master whalers and fishermen of their time. They had followed the cod further and further into the Atlantic, far beyond the sight of land. It is said they discovered the great fishing grounds off North America a century before Columbus made his famous voyage. But they kept it a secret. This was not a discovery to be shared with kings and queens. It was a source of wealth, their own private treasure. They sailed in secret, returning to port with their holds filled with salted cod, a commodity more reliable and often more valuable than gold. For explorers like John Cabot, who sailed from England in 1497, the dream was a route to Asia. But what he found was something else entirely. He did not find silks or spices. He found the sea off the coast of what we now call Newfoundland. And it was so thick with cod that his crew reported they could simply lower baskets into the water and haul them up, filled to the brim. The sheer abundance was breathtaking. It was a biological spectacle unlike anything seen in the depleted waters of Europe. The news spread like wildfire, not of a new continent, but of a sea of fish. This discovery changed everything. It was a revelation. The great obstacle to crossing the Atlantic, the problem of food, was solved. The New World was not just a landmass to be bypassed on the way to Asia. It was a destination in its own right, a place of infinite edible wealth. The cod became the true treasure of the New World. It was the fuel that would power the age of exploration. It fed the sailors, the colonists, the soldiers. It gave them the courage and the sustenance to face the unknown, to build settlements, and to lay the foundations of new empires on the shores of a vast, wild continent. The cod was not merely food. It became a currency, a foundation of international trade. In a world without refrigeration, a protein that could be preserved and transported across continents was a resource of immense strategic importance. The cod, salted and dried, became known as white gold. It was durable, easy to store, and high in energy. It fed the growing cities of Europe, providing a cheap and plentiful source of protein for the working classes. It filled the bellies of armies and navies, allowing nations to project their power across the globe. The humble cod was now at the center of a booming global economy. This immense value inevitably led to conflict. The fishing grounds of the Grand Banks off Newfoundland became a stage for international rivalry. Fishing fleets from England, France, Spain, and Portugal converged on these waters. Each nation sought to control this incredible resource. The cod fisheries were not just a commercial enterprise, they were a nursery for naval power. The thousands of ships and sailors involved in the cod trade provided a ready-made reserve of experienced mariners, essential for any nation with ambitions of ruling the waves. The fight for fish was a fight for naval supremacy. Wars were fought over these fishing rights. Treaties were signed and territories were claimed, all with the cod in mind. The struggle between Britain and France for control of North America in the 18th century was in many ways a cod war. The forts they built, the battles they fought, all were connected to the strategic importance of the fisheries. When the American colonies fought for their independence, access to the Newfoundland fisheries was a key demand in the peace negotiations. The founding fathers of the United States understood that political freedom was meaningless without economic independence, and for New England, that meant cod. The fish built entire economies. The famous triangle trade that linked Europe, Africa, and the Americas was partly built on cod. The highest quality dried cod was shipped to the Catholic countries of Europe. The lower grade fish, tough and heavily salted, was sent to the Caribbean to feed the enslaved populations working on the sugar plantations. In return, molasses from the plantations was shipped to New England, where it was distilled into rum. The profits from this complex and often brutal trade helped build the fortunes of cities like Boston and Salem. The cod was woven into the very fabric of empire. To understand the power of cod, one must understand the lives of those who harvested it. These were not admirals or kings, but ordinary fishermen. Their hands were stained with salt and fish blood, their faces weathered by wind and sea. Their existence was a relentless cycle of hard labor, governed by the tides and the seasons. They would leave their homes in small open boats called dories, often rowing far out into the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. They faced fog so thick it could swallow the world, sudden storms that could capsize a boat in an instant, and the ever-present danger of being lost at sea. The work was brutal and unforgiving. From dawn until dusk, they would haul in long lines, each armed with hundreds of hooks. Each fish was brought aboard by hand. The sheer physical effort was immense. Back on shore, the work continued. The fish had to be processed immediately. They were split open, cleaned, and their heads removed. Then came the salting. Men, women, and even children worked in sheds, layering the fish with mountains of salt to draw out the moisture. It was a production line driven by human muscle, a process that had changed little in centuries. After salting, the cod were laid out to dry on vast wooden platforms called flakes. These fields of fish stretched for acres along the coastlines of Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and New England. The air for miles around was thick with the pungent, salty smell of drying cod. The fishermen and their families had to constantly watch the weather, ready to rush out and cover the fish at the first sign of rain. Their entire livelihood depended on the sun and the wind. It was a life of constant vigilance, a partnership with the elements, a gamble taken every single day. This way of life created a unique culture. It forged communities that were resilient, self-reliant, and deeply connected to the sea. Their folklore, their songs, their very language was filled with the imagery of the ocean and the fish that sustained them. They were people who understood the power and the unpredictability of nature in a way that few others could. Their lives were not easy, but they were filled with a profound sense of purpose. They were the engine of the cod empire, the salt-stained hands that turned a simple fish into the foundation of fortunes and the fuel for history. The heart of this entire story lies in a specific place, the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. This is not land, but a vast underwater plateau, a submerged continent larger than many European countries. Here, two powerful ocean currents meet. The cold Labrador current flows down from the Arctic, and the warm Gulf Stream sweeps up from the tropics. This collision creates a perfect environment. It churns up nutrients from the seabed, creating a rich soup of plankton. And where there is plankton, there is life, an explosion of it. The Grand Banks became one of the richest fishing grounds the world has ever known. For centuries, this underwater kingdom seemed limitless. The schools of cod were so vast, they were described as solid masses that could slow the passage of a ship. They were the rulers of this domain, a single species dominating an entire ecosystem. This incredible concentration of life drew the fishing fleets of the world. It was a natural treasure chest that never seemed to run empty. Generation after generation of fishermen came here, believing that this bounty was eternal, a gift from God that could never be exhausted. It was a place of awe, a testament to the immense creative power of the natural world. The life of the cod itself is a remarkable journey. An adult female can release millions of eggs. These tiny, transparent spheres drift in the currents. Only a tiny fraction will survive the perilous journey to adulthood, avoiding predators and finding food. They grow in the cold, dark depths, feeding and maturing over several years. Then, driven by an ancient instinct, they gather in colossal spawning shoals, returning to the very places where they were born to continue the cycle. It is this predictable, reliable gathering that made them so vulnerable to capture. This very reliability, this seemingly infinite abundance, became the cod's great tragedy. The belief in its endlessness led to a relentless pursuit. As technology improved, from schooners and hand lines to massive factory trawlers with nets the size of cathedrals, the pressure on the cod populations grew exponentially. We were too good at catching them. We were taking them faster than they could possibly reproduce. The underwater kingdom of the Grand Banks, which had thrived for millennia and had built the modern world, was beginning to tremble. The foundation was cracking. The story of the cod does not have a triumphant ending. In the late 20th century, the impossible happened. The seemingly endless armies of fish vanished. The Grand Banks fell silent. After 500 years of relentless fishing, the populations collapsed. In 1992, the Canadian government was forced to declare a moratorium on cod fishing, putting an end to a way of life that had defined the region for centuries. 40,000 people lost their jobs overnight. It was an economic and cultural catastrophe, a stark warning from the natural world. The legacy of the cod is all around us, even if we no longer see it. It is carved into the history of the Western world. It is in the names of places, like Cape Cod. It is in the early wealth of nations, the lines on our maps, and the genetic makeup of the people who crossed the ocean. The dried cod on a Boston wharf and the slave on a sugar plantation were part of the same complex, brutal, and transformative story. This humble fish is a forgotten protagonist in the epic of our modern age, its influence deeper and more profound than that of many kings or conquerors. What the cod teaches us is a lesson in humility. It reminds us that human history is not separate from natural history. We are profoundly shaped by the living world around us, by the currents of the ocean, the migration of animals, and the abundance or scarcity of a single species. We may build empires and believe we are masters of our own destiny, but we are always dependent on the delicate web of life. The cod fueled our expansion and our ambition, and its collapse revealed the limits of our power and the consequences of our greed. Today, there are glimmers of hope. In some areas, with careful management, the cod are slowly beginning to return. But the great shimmering armies of the past are gone, perhaps forever. Their story remains an echo in the deep. It is a powerful reminder that nature holds a mysterious power to shape human destiny. It can build civilizations, and it can watch them fall. The tale of the cod is a tale of discovery, of wealth, of conflict, and ultimately of loss. It asks us to look at the world with a sense of wonder, but also with a profound sense of respect for the fragile, powerful forces that truly govern our planet.